welcome back to the garden. I've been away for about 10 days and it is nice coming back and seeing how much growth there has been. So firstly the sweet peas, just to cover the IBC tanks. These are smelling perfect. And then along here, well, lavender's looking good. Ignore this part. And then we've got all of these beautiful little flowers appearing. This is not a flower though, this is a weed. So some nice verbena, look at this. Just nice to add a little bit of a pop of colour. You might be able to see over there, we've got a nice border there of dahlias as well, which adding a nice pop of colour that didn't exist when I left. So yeah, the big thing that I've noticed is that a lot of colour has appeared. So this is another thing that has just shot out of nowhere. This fig tree, like it was here before, it didn't just magically appear. But there are so many little figs now appearing, which is really amazing to see. And yeah, we're going to keep this in here. It doesn't matter if this kind of like takes over half of the tunnel. It's just really nice to have a fig tree coming along very well. So the propagation bench is still nice and full, lots happening. This is purple sprouting broccoli, which I'll be putting out shortly. Some of them I might pot up again because I'm going to use these later on to replace the first batch of cucumbers. The idea is to get a really nice early harvest early next year. This here is really interesting. This is, if I can remember, Malabar. I nearly said Matador, but there's all sorts of different spinach beginning with them. This is Malabar spinach, which is a bit like a succulent. So the leaf is very succulent-like, and it's a climber. And I discovered this when I went over to visit and film at Raithwaite Sands End, and I was very struck by it. So I thought I want to grow it, and it's looking really nice. Then here I've got some Savoy winter cabbage, which is coming along nicely. And then all sorts of things happening. Pak choy, this is like the last batch of the pumpkins, Chinese cabbage, lots of fennel, beetroot, loads of things coming through. And I've got another big batch of sowing to do later on this week. So this is quite a nice little idea. We've got a little tiny bed, and usually I'm used to growing either kind of like a wigwam style trellis or a big A-frame, but here it's a mini A-frame of 3 with support bamboo. And I just really like this kind of little kind of structure of runner beans, which is another exciting thing coming back because I can see that the first runner beans are almost ready for harvest. So yeah, that's just like a nice little idea. If you have a nook, or in this case outside the polytunnel, Neil is, oh, he was hiding in here, but he's disappeared. And then on this side, kind of complementing the runner beans, just a load of Drusilla artichokes again to add structure, which I think creates quite a nice little entrance into the polytunnel. And there's a lot of things happening in here. So coming through, we've got some, this is Cape gooseberry or physalis that is growing really nicely. We've got all sorts of things happening. We've got lots of different peppers that are coming through. This is exploding cucumber, which just seeded absolutely everywhere. We've been managing to pot it on into different places. Just onions for something extra, melons, basil, and then loads and loads of tomatoes. This thing here is quite nice. This is buckwheat. I've never seen buckwheat grow this tall. But I kind of just thought, keep it in. I know I really shouldn't because I should be promoting a good airflow. But it's a nice little addition for now. But yeah, all in all, these are coming on really nicely. We're going to start getting lots of fruit. Yeah, by the way, I did see a ripe one, so. So it feels, I don't like saying it, it feels very autumnal here in the Wi-Fi garden because there are a lot of crops that were focused on like the first start of the season that have now come out or are coming to the end. So it feels autumnal, and I kind of want to show you a before because we've got a volunteer day coming up this Saturday, and one of the big things that we're going to focus on is completely overhauling this Wi-Fi garden. So it's going to change completely. The field beans, by the way, did absolutely amazing. I've now chopped and dropped them, so they're adding kind of nice biomass to the top of the soil. Here we've got soybeans. That there is a thistle, which is not meant to be there, but I'll let it carry on. What is interesting though, is even though they've barely been watered, these here, I think some of you might remember how excited I got about edible lupins, and they are creating a fair few pods, which I cannot wait to see what happens. So that was a nice surprise, because there were a few like little pods before I left, and now we've got some proper pods developing. So this tall Vigo garden bed is going to be nice. We've got this cosmos, which just seems to love it. And in here, I believe is a spaghetti squash, which is coming on well. And then a load of carrots. Because of it being above 2 foot up the ground, you shouldn't expect to get any kind of carrot root fly problems. So we've got giant red carrot, Malbec carrot, and dragon purple. So I'm actually going to see if I feel like there's something. Okay, there's some carrots here, which is most exciting. Maybe a little bit on the early side, but they're starting to come out. These, I've been really surprised with how quickly they started growing. And because they're I never thin carrots, so essentially I can just go through, pick some of the biggest, can make a nice pesto with the leaves, and let the other ones develop. Just an interesting one for you guys growing fruit. I was last week on a regenerative agriculture course taught by Richard Perkins, and talking about tree fruit, because that's something that we're going to do a lot here, already started. But he mentioned this book, I'll put a link in the description, about a really interesting way of training fruit trees by actually bending the leaders downwards using wire, and it creates a self-pruning tree that helps maintain vigor and productivity, but you don't have to spend as much time pruning. And it's a really interesting sounding concept, and so I've ordered that book just to find out a little bit more. And if you're wanting to plant a load of fruit trees and minimize as much time spent pruning, which can be a lot of time, check it out, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Sam said I should maybe talk a little bit about my trip away and why I had that trip away. So it was my summer holidays spent learning, and the goal for this site at 7 acres in size, we've got this top 5 acres, which I've always thought it would be really interesting to do an agroforestry project. And then the bottom 2 acres, which we're mainly focused at the moment to be more developed on horticulture. Some of you know that we're planning a vineyard, which originally was going to be over in that kind of section, that corner. But we've been doing a bit, this is part of the design process on the course, can actually do a nice long vineyard essentially up and around and beneath the ash tree, because this is the steepest part of the land. And the top part, we're going to create around 12 tree rows on keyline, which is a type of landscape design to move water nicely through the landscape, but to be more practical than doing it on contours, to have around 10 to 12 tree rows spaced 12 meters apart of high productivity apple trees, and then soft fruit in front of them, south facing, all the way up the landscape. And then to probably go for laying chickens on rotation, so kind of like holistic managed grazing, but it is chickens, but just moving them every 2 days to really build up the fertility of this site. And so yeah, gonna be fun. It's gonna be horticulture, orchardy, vineyard, tree rows and chickens. Sounds good. So one of the trickiest things has been the dry weather, which now has definitely disappeared. Planted these cob nuts and nothing ever happened, and I was feeling very sad. But now the majority of them are showing growth underneath. So there's a little bit of hope. I will need to replace, I think, about 3 or 4, but it's nice to see that. I really should have looked after these a little bit more, but there's only so much you can do. But yeah, just sometimes if you well, it was 3 or 4 months where all there was sticks. Sometimes it's just worth leaving things in the ground to see what happens. This is a perfect example. So we like to challenge the trees here. This is a flowering cherry, Blushing Bride it's called. And someone, not me, but someone decided to reverse over it. And it just completely snapped. And then, it's good to be optimistic. And so it's been kind of lashed together a bit. Should have maybe used grafting tape, but no, just some normal tape. And then added to this bamboo, and it's been growing ever since. It's time for the weekly. It's time for the weekly secret garden hint. And this nasturtium has decided to trail out from the secret garden. It makes you wonder what it's like inside, doesn't it? Before I left, the leeks hadn't properly started flowering, but now they have. They're starting to change colour. The bumblebees are starting to visit them. So yeah, going to be nice to start using these. Also had a big delivery of horse manure. And yeah, we found a really good local source, which is very exciting, especially considering that I can start making hotbeds at scale next year. And talking about next year, just want to let you know that I'm going to be doing a 5-day training course. I'll introduce more ideas and more information about it later on, but yeah, it's going to be a 5-day fully catered course on permaculture kitchen gardening, so stay tuned for that and look forward to seeing you again soon.